so for it to work. Good evening. Call to order the March 16th, 2022 meeting of the Poolsville Planning Commission. We've got everybody full attendance. Got Jay on the Zoom. Wade's in person. John's here. Do we have any citizens that are going to comment today that you know of? Nobody's made arrangements, all right. Any announcements from the town?
No.
Okay. Martin, do you have any announcements?
Yeah, one of the things, this is going to play into the master plan discussion later, but during the budget work session it came up that we were talking about streetscape, and we were talking about streetscape, just the whole thing, the whole streetscape, and then specifically in front of like Old Town Hall. And it was mentioned that should probably be something the master plan addresses, like, you know.
As a priority feature for that, or
yeah.
actually streetscape in general, how do we get
Right.
this off the ground?
Right, like what's
Plan.
the, how does it tie into businesses and how does it tie into everything? I think it's a really important part of Poolsville going forward, so that should be addressed in there.
Good point.
And since we're on that topic, I think we also talked about zoning possibly for that corner lot down there. Do we want to talk about some special zoning for it, or I don't know, do you want to limit it or you know, have a specific uses?
The Donegan
Next to
property.
CVS, the Donegan lot.
Oh, that lot.
Because Jim was saying, you know, we should work with the Donegans. That's like the gateway to town and all, and he's correct there. And when the 7-Eleven came along, we specifically wrote zoning that forbade gas stations, forbidden gas stations from going in. And you recall that was sort of put on the back burner. We kind of agreed to like postpone any zoning decisions, and he agreed to not come in with a 7-Eleven. But you know, it's our piece of property to like sort of shape what we want. Like, so, you know, obviously we don't want to be really ultra controlling, but like if we have, you know, things that we don't want there, we should specify that, because
Guide
that's
it more than be reactive.
Yeah.
it's perfectly legal. I mean, like, you know, you recall when we wrote the zoning before, like that was like Jay was like, yep, that's totally fair game. So, you know, I think that you know, we should work with Donegan and let him know what we don't want there, and it's an important part of the streetscape.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We've got approval of minutes of the February 16th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Any questions, comments, or edits?
I make a motion to approve the February 16th, 2022 minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. I wasn't here.
Oh, that's right. You weren't here.
Oh, well, okay, one abstention.
Yep. We'll go, we'll start with new business, and we'll go to Mr. Jameson if he's ready, and then we'll move on to the comprehensive plan and old business with our friends here from Wallace Montgomery, thank you. I was kept wanting to say Montgomery something else. Anyway, Wallace Montgomery, and then we'll get back to the standards. So, Mr. Jameson.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll give you, I'm not going to read this testimony tonight. My wife had minor surgery, and I'm the nurse.
All right.
God bless her.
God bless her.
So,
God bless her.
right.
Does
Thank
she have
you.
a little bell for you?
Yes, she does. The cell phone.
Thank you very much. Yes.
So, I believe it was 2019, I went to the commissioners, the elected commissioners, and proposed a clean energy zone for the town of Poolesville. And then the answer that came back to me is that we're going to get into redrawing or rewriting the master plan, wait until that period of time, and do it then. So, that's why I'm here.
Here we are.
And the reason I'm proposing this is because we were approached and have been approached by numerous solar companies to put in a solar field, not only for properties that we had here in Poolesville, but properties elsewhere here in Montgomery and Frederick County. And as you may or may not know, Montgomery County did adopt a zoning text amendment that would allow such a use to be done. But I'm going to use a technical term. It's a joke. It is very, very difficult to get that approved because they are using Class 3 soils. Class 3 soils are very bad soils. And there was never an overlay when they were going through that process of where the electric connectivity was. In other words, you need three-phase current to make any type of operation like that viable. And the overwhelming majority of properties in the RDT, or which is now the Ag Reserve, do not have that connectivity, do not have that three-phase current. As you get closer into metropolitan areas, Laytonsville, Olney, areas like that, yes, you will have that. The flip to that is that that's where some of the best soils in Montgomery County happen to be, is in that Olney, Laytonsville area. So there are some soils in the Damascus area that would work. Poolesville does not have that. The town of Poolesville, however, is a unique animal. We have three-phase current coming in from the substation in Bellsville, comes down Elgin Road, State Route 109, comes in, goes down Fisher Avenue to the wastewater treatment plant. We have three-phase that goes to the high school and then carries on down to the golf course. The golf course has two power sources coming in, one off of West Willard Road and the other off of Hughes Road. The one that comes off of Hughes Road is a Pepco line, not a Potomac Edison or a First Energy line. Cattail Road has three-phase current. The upside to that is that we have the schools here in Poolesville that needed that type of power that came into it. So we're unique in that we have that kind of connectivity in the town. You're also unique in that the town of Poolesville has its own zoning. Thus, I'm here talking to you. Now, I am not a electrical engineer by any stretch of the imagination. I am a real estate person who happens to own land that people contacted me about. I don't come in front of boards like you for philanthropic reasons. I come to you so that I may have a chance to make some money. And what we were doing, my brother Bobby owns a farm and I own a farm with my siblings, my grandmother's property on Cattail Road. So I wanted to show you And this is just something that was done years ago, and show you why, if you start to think about what's going on today with the price of just oil going up, it's volatile, right? Goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. And this thing going on with Russia, we only get maybe 7% of our fuel oil from Russia. That's minor. We can make that up. That's not hard to make up. But damn it, why should we have to have this volatility? I'm going to end up owning an electric car someday in my life, and you all might too. I know damn well my children will. So it's time we get on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to bore you all a little bit. This was not done by me. This was a presentation given to my family to try to get us to reach an agreement with this particular company to put solar panels on. So I did get a couple people who know this stuff, and they looked at it, and one lady used to work, she was the vice president of Pepco. And she came and looked at it, studied it a little bit, and all I had to do was buy her lunch. Didn't have to pay hardly any damn thing. And she said that much power generated on that site would probably, that's 90 acres right there, would probably generate enough power for all western Montgomery County, because you have no heavy industry up here. All you have are houses and farms. You have no real heavy industry. And that would power enough. Now, that's a hell of a, that, however, would, and she told me, have the necessity of having overhead power lines going back out up to the substation in Bellsville. Now, you know and I know, to get overhead power lines approved any damn place is a heavy lift. It's not going to happen, and I'm not going to do it. All right? So I said, pare it down to something that's tenable that would work, and that's 15 acres. 15 acres as a community solar project for people of the town of Poolesville makes sense. Economically, it would help the town. I'm in the real estate business. I know these kind of things. You know, we sell a lot of sizzle with the state when you sell anything. And part of the sizzle would be, I have a green community. And you, if you are interested, can sign into community solar, because that's pretty much all you're going to get in Maryland in these size projects anymore, is a community solar project. That means that you can sign in and buy your electricity from these type of projects. All right? That's the long and short of it. Historically, you were paying less per kilowatt hour than you would if you were buying it from First Energy. First Energy is primarily coal-fired and natural gas-fired. They have some of the lowest rates. Pepco, on the other hand, has pretty high rates. BG&E have high rates. So Potomac Edison, First Energy, has lower rates. Even this would be at a lower per kilowatt rate than First Energy would be. So I thought, and this is the problem everywhere, there is very little legislation that would allow, or zoning use that would allow these type of facilities. That's been the biggest holdup primarily in Maryland. I don't know about other states, but in Maryland that's been the biggest holdup. On the Eastern Shore, they have that kind of legislation. They've worked like the dickens in Frederick County to do it, and they well, I won't get into their problems. They have their own, I have my own opinion about it. But anyway, I'm asking you to consider this. This would be in the Poolesville rural zone, what we call the 25-acre zone. It would not be, in my opinion, allowed in other zones. It should be allowed, and there should be a percentage of use on any property. In other words, you wouldn't do 100% of it, like this thing. That's 100%. I mean, that's the whole tillable area of that farm. But it is not unrealistic or unreasonable to believe you could have something like that. And these are companies, it won't be Jameson doing it, I lease the land to them. I'm not gonna sell it to them. My grandparents owned that farm, we got it through inheritance, I don't have a dime in it, and I ain't gonna sell it, okay? Unless you give me 2 acre zoning on that property, and then I might take it out. Okay. Anyway, I think this time has come that you all give that a consideration. Poolsville is a unique town. I mean, my God, we're in Montgomery County, we're 33 miles from the Capitol building in Washington. To have something like this in a community like the size of Poolsville, you make your town more marketable, more appealing, more where people want to come to it. You know, one of you just said that, 2 or 3 of you already own cars that are electric fired. I mean, my God, it's the future, man. I got solar panels on my barn. I put them on there for the tax breaks that I got, but it does 40% of my power in my house. And so when you sit there and you look at it, right? I'm not going to talk economics to you, but you have choices in your life where you're going to invest your money. Real estate, stocks, bonds, gold, diamonds, whatever. So I put panels on my barn, and I was telling my CPA one day about it. He thought of it, oh, this, that, and the other. I said, well, let's do the math. I'm getting a 12% return on my investment. Can you guarantee me that anywhere? And he said, damn, boy. And he put them on his barn. So he did not give me a reduction on his rate, or his CPA rate. But anyway, that's my pitch. For whatever it's worth, give it a consideration. There are people who are in this town who know a hell of a lot more about this stuff than I did. Joyce Bryant, I've talked to her, and she is a wealth of information. She's knowledgeable. She was the one who turned me on to the lady who was a former vice president of Pepco. And that lady she knew what she was talking about. And she said, to make solar work, you need critical mass. You need something like this to make it work. But when she told me what it needed for connectivity to the substation, I thought, man, you've got to pick your battles. That's one I didn't want to pick. That's it. You all have any questions?
So those are 10 acres?
What's that?
10 acres, you said?
This is 15 acres,
15.
this piece. And that is producing, that would be 50, oh, and all of these would have the, the thing that allow flowers and pollinators and things like that, which is a good thing, especially in the ag reserve. You need stuff like that. Be fenced off. Mine would be fenced off because I'm facing, if you go down Cattail Road, those panels would be facing south and they're facing away from the road. So when we were talking to these people about it, we wanted it screened, primarily trees, evergreens that we would screen it with, because it would not would not negatively impact the production. How much did this thing produce?
Can I ask a question real quick? You said that that proposed one is 15 acres out of 96 is the parcel, right?
It's 140 acres.
148.
If you look, this is the outline of my property. My brother has 90 acres over on Hughes Road and Bud Road.
Okay.
I'm not pitching for him.
No.
But he's in the same zone, all right?
I was just trying to
And
see
this is
what
not-
percentage that
I don't want any
is.
spot zoning. I think this should be for all
11%.
properties that have the PRD in the town of Mooresville.
So that's 11% of the acreage on that property. I just wonder how much property falls under that and what total percentage of farmland that potentially would be. I don't know.
But you're right, I'm thinking the same way, it'd be a lot coverage aspect, we did take a look at it to do that.
Right. 11% seems, I don't know, maybe high to me, but I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you know, I had this discussion with Bob Sisson. Bob is the advocate for the Montgomery ag producers, okay? And we had this discussion about it, and he would be opposed to this because he believes that it's a mission creep kind of proposal, where it would grow and grow and grow. And one thing that a lot of people seem to forget is that agriculture is an industry that changes. At one time in this part of the world, we harvested tobacco. And when they burned the soil out, they went to other things. I grew up here in this town. We had cattle on that property. And then when the cattle did not work out, weren't making any money off of cattle, my brother, we made hay off of it. And hay is a type of product that you grow and you bale and you put in your barn and you sell it and you pray to God that the people that you give it to will pay you. It's not as lucrative as people would think. And then my brother Jamie got into small grains, and he's made a gang of money off of it. But lately, his children got into sod. All permitted uses in agricultural use, in an agricultural zone. But agriculture changes. All we're doing is farming the sun. I know it's going to, I guarantee you that within 100 years, even that use would change. So agriculture changes. It doesn't, it's an industry. It cannot remain the same, because if it does, like the cotton or like tobacco burned our soil out. You couldn't grow it anymore. And you had to have slaves to do it. So it changes. And even Bob, who will argue with me, because he and I are good friends and we like yelling at each other, he will admit that agriculture changes. You have to allow it to change. And you have to allow the people who own the ground to use it for those type of changes. Or else you'll be out of business, be sold. And now we're blessed with an agricultural reserve, but it's the Eros master plan for Montgomery County. Agricultural reserve and open space. This complements open space. It doesn't take away from it. There's no houses there. There are no industrial buildings, no big barns, no facilities that are will rot and get torn down. These kind of things, somebody's going to maintain them or change them. One day, all of this stuff is going to change. I remember, you all might be too young for this. Like that? That's a good segue. 1978, Jimmy Carter, when he was president, started the first solar program in the country. It was a pilot program that he started in Colorado. And he put panels on top of the White House. Now the big thing then was solar hot air and solar hot water. But Jimmy Carter was graduated from the Naval Academy as a nuclear engineer and spent his tour of duty as a nuclear person on a submarine. So he knew what the hell he was talking about. He knew that this was something that was the future. Now, I've often said to people that if his plan, Ronald Reagan got elected and he got rid of the program, cut back on all those expenses. But if Carter's program was still in play today, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you, and we might be having a much better energy production from renewable energy than we do now. We might be not only the leader here in the North America, but in the world of the whole damn industry. So if you look at the last sentence that I have on this dissertation, and this is not well done, I will admit, but the last thing I say is think globally and act locally. I didn't coin that term, but I think, but it is true that, in my opinion, the town, I'm looking at it as not only an economic gain for me, got to be honest with myself, possible economic gain, but it will add value to the town of Poolsville. It will enhance the quality of life of the citizens of this town. There's no damn question about it. And it will make Poolsville a more recognized community than almost any other damn thing you can do. Now, that's my opinion. You can take it for whatever it's worth.
Mr. Jameson, I'm sorry. Can you tell me approximately where the property is located? I'm looking at a map of the incorporated areas. Where are we talking?
On the other side of
Okay, right up in here.
Brenda's house. So
Mm-hmm.
you cross the creek, and on your right, as you're going out Cattail Road, is,
Yeah.
and so the big turn at Capitol Fence, he's across the street from Capitol Fence.
Okay, I see.
This is the end of the town, right here. That line is the town
Yeah,
boundary,
I
right
have-
there.
I have the aerial map up on my computer.
Your house is right here.
Yeah. So right across, yeah.
Okay.
So how does the power get from Cattail to my house on Soper?
How does the power get, it's alternating current.
I mean, no, when,
There's overhead lines. Carry it in.
so I thought you said you'd have to put lines, overhead lines back to Bellsville.
Well, that's for a very large, like he's talking, a
The
huge.
big towers, he's talking about like this big.
Oh, those big ones, like,
Yeah.
that are on the Woodstock farms.
They wouldn't be that size. If you go down the power lines that run out to NIH, so if you go down.
Oh, yeah, on Edwards,
White's Ferry Road,
yeah,
that would be the size of those lines.
Pretty big.
yeah. So how does it, so if you build this 14-acre thing, how does the power get from that solar panel to my house on
It just
Soper?
goes in the grid. It's alternating current, so the capacity of the line is large enough to handle it, so they don't have to add additional lines.
Oh, so it doesn't necessarily go to my house?
No, just like our solar array at the wastewater plant doesn't go directly to the wastewater plant, it goes into the grid, it's a virtual metering system that,
Oh, so it doesn't make like when, every week someone nails a telephone pole and knocks the power out to our house. That doesn't alleviate that.
No,
I don't get special power from
no.
this thing. So it doesn't. So I really don't know. I'm still paying Potomac Edison.
Frank may want to run those lines to your house, but I don't
You know.
Yeah, if
you have panels
I believe
on
right
your
on
house.
Soper, right on the other side of that field. If you could just run a direct line.
Maryland is a net power state. So even if you have panels on your house,
I don't get to use.
I'm just, if
yeah.
you did,
Yeah,
doesn't mean that if the power goes out, you're getting power off of those.
yeah.
That power first goes through the meter and back into their system. So what you're doing, it's net metering.
Yeah.
So whatever you're putting in is coming off your meter, but you don't get it. It goes to them.
So I don't. So I understand when I have roofs on my roof. I mean solar on my roof, and I do net metering. I get a little. I don't. You'll see a benefit from this because you have a lease, but I don't see any benefit. My bill doesn't get less, right?
If
Is that-
you sign up for the community solar from the company that puts those panels in,
Uh-huh.
they will do very similar to what you all do over at the wastewater treatment plant. They will sell you power at a lesser rate.
But can anyone can sign up for that, right? Like someone from Barnesville,
Yes.
Germantown?
You could, you might be able to put a codicil on your zoning that the town has, for the residents in your community have the first pickings.
Oh,
You could do that. I own property in Frederick County. I'm in the Potomac Edison system. I could, under theory, have my property in Frederick County because I'm under the same system. be getting community solar from Poolsville,
Yeah.
Montgomery County, because it's the same system. And that's how they do it. So XYZ Solar Company negotiates with me, and we come to a meeting of minds, and they start a community solar program that would allow you to sign on to their program, and then you get a lesser kilowatt rate than you would from the power company.
So, can I sign up for that now?
Some places you can, yeah.
Can I just?
But you got to be in this system. So BG&E, Baltimore Gas and Electric, they have good community programs that they have been doing.
Oh.
But you got to be in their system. You have to be getting your power from them.
Okay.
Because that's who the solar company is selling their power to.
So I guess like when you get this all set up and running, and I say, oh, I want the green power, sign me up for that,
Yeah.
and then my bill's less.
Is your bill
Sweet.
going to be
Well,
less?
I don't know.
I don't know,
That's-
because you also have transmission and distribution
Right.
charges.
Yeah,
Oh,
There's a lot
It's
of,
your-
there's always
Okay.
extra
It's
stuff, which
your
we have to pay
kilowatt
also.
hour that is less. All those other fees, if you look at your bill, all those other charges that, well, hell, we pay a tax in Montgomery County for power,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's not going to change.
yeah.
That might be a little bit less because your power.
But your rate per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
is less.
So those weren't changed. It's the kilowatt hour usage that will change.
Okay.
What you save on is that you did not have to buy the system and put it on your roof or on your property. You have escaped the necessity of buying all that equipment and putting it on.
Got
And
it.
somebody else has to own it, has to maintain it, has to do whatever they have to do to get that power to you.
So like, is it a limit of how many people can join the Poolsville solar
You know, I
community?
can't give you those answers.
Oh,
Yeah, we'd have to dig a little deeper if we wanted to have that direction to investigate it.
so basically, you're saying you don't have to put solar on your roofs, you people in Westmont and Westerly.
Yeah.
I can do it in this field, and you could take advantage of the net metering.
It's like the lady said, it's the critical mass that you need. The
Okay.
more that you have, the less it costs.
Yeah.
And that's what she was getting at. And when I looked at this big plan, I said to myself, it's too much of a heavy lift for me at this point in my life and my desires of other things to do besides fight all my neighbors.
Yeah.
Hell, I'm in real estate. I walk around with a target on my back anyway. So, but, you know, that I wasn't going to get into that. But give me something that I can hook into the system now, and I'll do it.
Yeah.
I think there's some interesting things here that would have to be discussed, but one of the things that I have a hard time following the logic on is, like, you know, I can appreciate that farming changes constantly, and you gave a great example of that, you know, with the you know, over the years, and the tobacco and the hay and everything. But I do think that this is jumping from farming to something that's not farming anymore, even though people call it solar farming. I mean, you know, by that logic, you could say, well, you know, farming changes, like, you know, it's time to build houses, like, on that property, and that's, you know, something that the county or the ag reserve says you can't do. So, to me, it's got, there's some interesting points that you've made, but you know, I don't consider solar as like agriculture. I think it's like completely separate. And I'd like to look into like why the county like watered down the ZTA, like what their reasoning was. You know, I know
We were
that
well lobbied.
I know
That's
that
why.
I know that we're Poolsville, and you know it doesn't matter. But I'd like to just hear their reasons. And John, do you have any thoughts on this? Do you like any pitfalls or?
I'd have to look at it a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's whole debates that went on with that ZTA
Yeah.
zoning text agreement, and it was a lot of lobbying.
Yeah.
I remember there's different sides. Here in Poolsville, you're going to hear two different sides. You're going to hear from Joyce, Poolsville Green, and you're going to hear from Caroline in the
Alliance.
Countryside Alliance.
Let me
And
mention something.
you're
too
going to get
that-
black and white arguments.
That is somewhat related, but not 100% related. Ask yourself this question. You're in a municipality. Why do you have an agricultural zone? Why do you have that? You have a county that has 93,000 acres. You have 3 schools, and we all know, I don't give a damn what, I just went by Charles Woodward High School that is now leveled, torn down on Old Georgetown Road. So if you think it won't happen here, you're wrong.
They're rebuilding that.
Right, they're going to rebuild, but it's on the ground.
So I know the answer to your question. The reason we have an ag reserve, I think, was in case, for whatever reason, the county does away with the ag reserve, then we still have a little bit of cushion and parkland around us. I think.
Well-
I might be wrong on that. Am I wrong?
There wasn't really desire to, first they changed the zoning, circular route, the higher density in the center, and you go out like this, and then they just didn't do the 25 acres. In case you're right, we did talk about having a niche zone where in case they did encroach on, we would have a buffer going to the,
Yeah.
now considerably the agricultural zone is 25 acre zone.
And you can see that reflected in the answers to the survey, like, you know, open space and, you know, is a huge thing that people are in favor of.
Well, hell, everybody's in favor of open
Yeah,
space.
So,
You know? That's, but
so
we had 2 properties. This property was annexed in, and my brother's property was annexed in, along with the Warther property. Harry Leeds' property was annexed in. And the way that they all got annexed in was to come in as agricultural. Okay, nobody came in as a higher density. And Poolsville is a pure 1 to 25. So any subdivision of that property would have been a minimum of a 25-acre lot, which is different from the county. We don't have any development rights on those properties. We lost all of the development rights by coming into the town. So what you need to ask yourself, well, why did we have this agricultural zoning to be a buffer and complement? That doesn't mean this does not buffer the town from, and the possibility that Montgomery County is ever going to back away from the ag reserve would be a very heavy lift indeed. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. There's not enough pressure. Pressure is what changes that type of density, that type of use, what pressure is put on. And now if you look at the surrounding properties around the town, even Harry Leeds' property that is owned by Billy Willard has an easement on the property in favor of the Maryland Environmental Trust, as does the Kephart property. So you have properties that are well, that's not true. I was going to say the golf course touches the town, but not in the same way that, so you have the buffer around the town, in my opinion, that would already protect you. To get out of those programs means you have to, as the applicant, go to the legislature of the state of Maryland, get them to approve it, and that's the House of Delegates and the state Senate, and then it has to go back to the county council, and they have to approve it. And you have to repay the monies that were forwarded to you by those entities when you went into the program, plus a penalty. So there has to be a huge amount of pressure put on that area, that property, for it to get that type of 3, and any one of those entities I just mentioned can blackball you. So that's a pretty damn heavy lift. Anyway.
Mr. Jameson,
Yes, ma'am.
so, first off, what is your class soil?
I don't know. I think it's 2. I'm pretty sure it's 2.
Class soil is important. Class 1 is going to be for your grains and your higher yield crops. Class 2, of course, you can still get wheat, lower
Sure.
yield crops. You can also make hay, like you said. Class 3 is more for pasture land. So the reason I'm assuming why they put these restrictions on is because they don't want high-level fertile land, class 1 and 2 soils, and even some class 3s for...
Could be, yeah.
This makes sense. Class 4 soils tend to be rocky. You would maybe use them for pasture. They're very low capacity. 5 is trash. I'm speaking from my work in Oklahoma. So, because I used to appraise farmland back a while ago. So it makes sense to me that the county would say, you cannot put these sort of things on high-yield lands for agricultural purposes within the ag reserve. Although I do, to some degree, agree with you that I do think that harvesting energy is harvesting, and that you could make a very good argument for it that that is farming. So then I have to think about, you said solar and wind. Wind is not feasible. A wind turbine is over 300 feet tall. At most, you could put one on every 15 to 25 acres. You said you have roughly 90 acres. That's 4 windmills, and I'm not even sure you could get it through because of the nearby airports. It's not going to work. I mean, granted, a 2 megawatt windmill or turbine will more than, it's probably about, what, 1,000 houses per turbine? So yeah, so roughly 4,000 houses, but that'll never fly. So we're only talking about solar energy here. I have a lot of thoughts on this, obviously, but I guess my biggest question and the burden for you would be, what is the town's benefit? I mean, we're giving up, like you said, buffer zone, which I'm not sure that this was intentionally created. A lot of towns that are rurally located just naturally incorporate farmland and then just don't change the zoning. So I'm not sure that that was an intentional zoning decision, but it doesn't make sense for us to change it without having good reason. It doesn't bring employment. It doesn't add benefits. So I guess my question is that while I am very much for diversifying and making sure that our sources of energy are diversified, because you don't want to put all of your chickens in the oil basket or in the coal basket. I see benefits to this. Why, from our perspective, would it be beneficial to the town to reduce our buffer zone to do something that, as far as I can tell, doesn't actually benefit the town in any way? It doesn't, there's not like, would there be a gift in kind? Would there be some sort of, what is the benefit?
Well, I think you missed what I said earlier. If you have a town that you can prove that is a green town, there are people who live in this metropolitan area who will gravitate to this area and be willing to pay a premium to live here. We already have people who are coming here who are paying a premium to live here. Going green means you can have that premium for everybody, not just for the new houses, but everybody. The school here in this town is one of the best in the country. Now, did we do something to make that happen? The Board of Education did. But it raised everybody's value in this town. It made all of us prouder to be Poolesvillians. Everybody, the whole community. So, did it add any employment to the town any more than what was already there? I don't know. I don't think so. Did it do anything that was encouraging any other industries to come to the town? Not that I know of. But it has raised the level of awareness by the people of the metropolitan area, if not only the state of Maryland, about the town of Poolesville. These type of things will do that. They help that whole ambiance of being in the town. The Revenue Authority went out here and have torn down the old building and going to put in a wine making facility. Personally, I don't know if that was, I think that was an overreach by them, but does it hurt the community? I don't see it really adding any real employment that was not already there when the golf course was there. I don't see it doing anything but making it a more attractive community to live in.
Respectfully, sir, I see what you are saying in that you believe that having this in our town will add to some sort of status or visual appeal. But I do not think that it is equivalent to say that a school that benefits the town by educating its children, or say the solar panel that is owned by the town that benefits the town by providing net power for the sewer capacity, or the Stomp facility that is anticipated to bring tourism, is equivalent to a field of solar panels privately held for your sole benefit. I'm not sure that I would equate the appeal or the visual or calling it a green community to actual benefits of, say, the school. Respectfully, I don't see that equivalency, but I'm not saying that other people wouldn't. So I just something, I am not opposed to this idea out of hand. Like, I'm not, oh, absolutely not. I see merits in diversification, like I said, and I would like to explore it more. But I would also like to know, what does the town get out of it?
You know, if you always look at what do I get out of it, that means nothing ever gets done. Now, think about that. If that is the sole intention of any government, well, what do we get out of it? Then nothing gets done. Really. I take that position because I deal with a lot of people selling different things to them. And we fight with governments on all kinds of different aspects. And that question does come up periodically. And I've heard some of the best people answer it, that if that is the position, what do we get out of it? Then nothing ever gets done. Nothing gets done.
I think we've raised some good points. I appreciate you coming in and sharing this idea with us. I think it deserves great consideration and more digging into, but I think we've reached a point where we've said what we need to say, and
Yeah.
thank
And I
you very much.
appreciate your time. I really do.
As we appreciate yours.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm going home to do my nursing duty now.
We've been here on time.
Maybe 1 minute later.
Oh, the mic's on too.
It was two.
Just throwing stuff.
My eyes are getting heavy now.
Yeah. I gotta fix my chair.
Show offs.
All right, so we're going to move into the old business now. Thank you guys very much for that discussion. We'll move into old business with the comprehensive plan discussion with Wallace and Montgomery.
Great.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me back this. I am the project manager for Wallace Montgomery. And we are coming back before you this evening primarily to discuss the results of the community survey that closed a few weeks ago, we were very happy to see that there were almost 540 responses and a packet of almost 100 pages of comments and data, and lots of individual comments to read through, but lots of great information here that is going to really help us in this effort. A lot of it mirrors some of the discussions that we've already had. So some of those early homework assignments that we did, we're seeing similar responses from the community at large, which is always great to see that there's a meeting of the minds. Obviously, there are some new items that have come up or things like that, but I think that generally the conversations have been going in a similar direction. I know one of the, or some of the concerns before we released the survey were, is this going to be something that is primarily responded to by residents of the town, or is it going to be people that visit or whatnot? But we did have about 90% of the responses come from those who live within the town. Almost 97% own their home within the town. So, these are people that have really have those roots in the community. And the greatest segment of responses came from those that have lived here for over 20 years, so about 35%. So that's, that really says a lot about the town and what people think of it. So that's definitely great to hear. When people responded to why they wanted to live in Poolesville, we heard responses like the small town atmosphere. That was by far the greatest percentage of responses that came back, and as well as the great schools that are here, coupled with rural character. And safety and low crime. So those are all very positive items. I'm okay, thank you. When we started to look into what concerns the people who responded to the survey, items similarly were that they want to make sure that small town character that is so desired is preserved moving forward. And along with that, keeping the local businesses, the mom and pop type stores here, and things that really weren't as much of a concern were the having too little growth or too little development. That's definitely the opposing side that concerns people more. Some of the responses that we've seen throughout the questions, regardless of what question it is that they want to see the ferry reopened. There's a desire for the community center, for open space connectivity. Some new businesses are filling vacant spaces, but those would be desired to be local businesses, not chains. Something that really says this is Poolesville, not this is any town USA.
Did anyone ask for a solar farm?
I don't know. I don't know that there were any specifics, but 100 pages is difficult to memorize. But there was actually quite a bit of discussion about making sure that Poolesville is sustainable, looks at climate change and all that goes along with that. Is a green community, and there was actually one comment in here that noted the desire for Poolesville to be the community to look to as far as those green efforts and things like that. So that's a lofty goal for to reach, and if that's a desire to have in the comp plan, that takes on a whole different life as compared to more of a focus on, say, purely economic development or things of that nature. So it's an interesting balancing act, or can be, depending on the priorities that we really choose to focus on. Similarly, when we were asking about how we can improve quality of life, things that were highlighted, again, were pedestrian safety, improved public transportation, different food options. So we see grocery store was the #1 item listed when we were asking about what businesses people would like to see come to the area. And again, keeping those at the sort of the local level, and any rental properties or even businesses having a local owner or representative to really have a stake in that property or business. The town's greatest strengths and assets, I don't think many of these will come as a surprise. The good schools, the small town charm, sense of community, its rural setting. Some of the other responses were that it's still a town. It's, it hasn't grown too big. It still reflects that character. And especially the people who live here, who visit, who work here, who help to make this a vibrant and friendly and safe community. So that's that's a testament to the community itself. Also highlighted were the history of the town, the location and presence and within the ag reserve. And one comment that I starred here was it's Mayberry, but close to Washington D.C. So that's an interesting way to look at it, but just really trying to focus in on those tangible items that really make you think of Poolesville. Critical issues that are facing the town both today and in the future. Again, these are some of the same items that we had identified during earlier discussions, but making sure that water quality remains, quality and quantity, keeping small businesses open, looking for appropriate businesses within the downtown area, keeping schools a top priority, and making sure that development is appropriate when it does occur, to make sure that we're enhancing the appeal of the town itself, not detracting from it. When we looked at what people would like to see within the town, the highest responses were for more programs for seniors who live here, as well as expanded parks and recreation facilities. Other high-ranking items were additional programs for teens and some traffic calming measures. That being said, the top priority out of all of them was to ensure that there is adequate water and sewer service provided. So, again, really reiterating a lot of the earlier comments. Some others are that there's a desire for expanded medical services within the community. And really trying to capitalize on the town's historic heritage and all that really means. Wanting to really promote the uniqueness of the area, which includes the agricultural setting. Perhaps that could be highlighted with some farm-to-table type businesses, supporting local farmers and products, things of that nature. When we asked about what new or additional facilities are desired or needed, keeping in mind the facilities that are already in existence. The higher ranking comments came back, the community center or indoor facilities, having some additional multi-use trails, and then the seasonal bubble for the county pool. So definitely looking to those unique features. Write-in comments there were heavy on the indoor sports, as well as having a local police substation, not necessarily manned 24/7, but something that people could know when they could expect an officer to be present to be able to interact with that safety service. There was quite a bit of, or a wide range of opinions when discussing the types of residential development that would be supported, ranging from none whatsoever to affordable housing to some smaller lot, more modest homes, startup homes, that type of thing. We did see a strong desire for those entry-level or starter homes, as well as the more modest lots and retirement community, or the ability to age in place, so that those that have moved here and seen their families grow up don't have to leave when they aren't as well able to take care of things as we all face when we start getting older. The ones that were more strongly opposed are the condominium type buildings or developments, as well as apartment buildings. Some people did mention that if there were smaller apartments or sort of a one-off building, that's something that could provide some of those lower price points, but having these really large apartment type developments would really start to change the character of the town. And then the good old, what did we not ask you about that you want to tell us about? So here we had a few comments related to aesthetics or the streetscape in various locations, but those are items that have that more visceral feel to them. Wanting to not repeat the actions of some other towns in the region or in the state, so really distinguishing Poolesville itself, but learning from things that other towns have done, supporting small businesses, focusing on agricultural tourism, and being a community that really supports and protects the environment. Some responses just flat out expressed a desire for discouraging all new development within the town. So that's definitely one way to go. Or there's the efforts to have that balancing act. What is the right level of development or redevelopment? Keeping in mind the desire to preserve the environment and historic properties and things of that nature. There were also opinions expressed that the responses did not want the town to become a residential community that is only available to those to the affluent populations. That there really should be an effort to have a more diverse range of price points, and of course that means sizes, but paying careful attention to the actual type of development and the quality of development, regardless of size or price. Let's see. And then Some other comments that were a little different were perhaps wanting to see some more public art or things like that. That again would go back to the quality of life and community, but in a different sense. And also wanting to not concentrate all of the efforts within the center of the town, but looking at the edges and addressing any needs that are at those locations. Let's see. Some comments noted that Poolesville is a bit of a bedroom community, and it has great access to the surrounding region, and that's why people came to this area. Not necessarily opposing, but different position is that perhaps the town should try to become more of a day trip or weekend destination that really highlights the unique assets that are here, and bringing in DC area residents or others from the greater region to capitalize on that and bring some of that outside economic value to the area. And so those were, in general, just some very quick highlights to the, I have to assume, thousands of comments. I'll have to actually add up all of the comments that are here. But this is really leading us into one of the next exercises that we're going to be looking at and hoping to schedule, which would be a visioning workshop or something like that, where hopefully now that the pandemic situation seems to be moving in the right direction, looking at something that's an in-person event where we can have some more interaction with the public, and looking at some different options, different information, and really getting to the core of what people value. So we'll use information from this survey, from your responses, from the presentations that were made to the Planning Commission before we started with this project. Use those to help craft a variety of different exercises and discussions that we can hold with participants of that type of an event. So I guess at this point I just wanted to open it up and see, if you had any comments or questions, or if there was anything that really surprised you in these responses, or were they ones that you were expecting to hear?
So I wanted to start by saying that I started reading through that 100-page document last night just to get everyone's.
Where is that?
It's linked right below. There's 2 links. The one right below is the 100-page document. So I started reading through all the comments last night, and around page 19 or so, I didn't realize that I had switched questions from businesses you want in town to businesses you don't want in town. And I saw things like gambling, strip club, pornography store, and I was like, somebody has been messing with this. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I missed the question. So if you read it, I was like, wow, more progressive than I thought. So just be really careful, because sometimes the questions are not bolded, and if you're going fast, you miss it, and you're like, what are these people talking about? Then I decided it was probably time to not read anymore, because I was like, wow, that was a big miss. One thing I will say that I was a little surprised by was that, I forget which question number it was, but people did note that, senior programming, more programs for seniors were really important, but it really didn't show up as a priority for housing and some of the biggest concerns, percentage-wise. I was just intrigued that one ended up at the top at a different question, but didn't seem to be as big of a concern in other places. Because that's been something that I feel like we've heard for a while from the community, that's something people really want. It was just interesting to me.
Tell me what the name of the, I've always heard them called charrettes, but you had a different name for like the...
We call it a visioning workshop. We can name it whatever you want us to, but that I think that really helps us get to the core focus of what the ultimate result of that type of an event would be, where we sort of start with broader questions or issues, what are, not to repeat a SWOT analysis, but, what are really the key assets? What are the major challenges, things like that, and then drilling down to what do you want the town to be known for? When you tell someone you live in Poolsville, what kind of an image do you want that to conjure in their minds? And how do we translate that into a foundation to build the rest of the comprehensive plan on?
Can I just throw one thing out too? As you were going through the comments now, I was going down further since I stopped at page like 19 last night. We might want to take some of the pages out, like print to PDF, and remove pages 85 to 99. That's the names of the respondents, their addresses, and their email addresses. That's now on our website, and I don't know that we should even I don't know if it matters. I didn't notice it until now. I was like, I wonder what's on the last page. And I was like, oh, that should probably not be there. So just as an FYI.
And my apologies for that. I think we hadn't intended to export that piece out of the survey instrument, but was one of those fun technological challenges that we run into all the time.
I was going to joke that I was going to try to guess who gave the response and then have a competition, whoever got the most correct answers.
Well, it's not everybody there, because I was looking, there's not as many respondents as there are total. It's whoever optionally answered that and wanted to receive information about the comprehensive plan. So it's important information for our town staff to have. I just don't know that we need it or the rest of Poolsville or the internet needs it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Hope everybody else about their 19
I don't know, this is a lot of information to digest. So we did have a very brief, still 4 pages, but a much briefer synopsis of the information. But we are continuing to look at all of this data and analyze it and pull out key pieces that will help to focus different efforts when we're continuing to work on the analysis and drafting of the narrative and things like that. So this is not the last time you'll be hearing about the survey, and we're excited that there were so many people that cared and put in some really great comments, so we'll definitely be using them throughout the process.
Any other questions about the data?
No, now that I found it, I'm going to, I'll be
Yeah.
reading it for days.
Just be careful.
I went right to your question you mentioned. And it's funny.
No, it's all very interesting, and I like how you guys have laid it out. This is great.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's a lot right now, but when we pare down pull out what we need when we're focusing on a particular subject or particular direction, I think it'd be much more useful than just the barrage of information right now.
Definitely, and PDFs aren't the easiest way to analyze this, so we do have other options, like primarily Excel spreadsheet type things that can be
I do
sorted
love a
and things like
spreadsheet.
that. So that's something
I really
that,
do. You can sort information in any way.
So I was wondering, is that something you're gonna do, is compile the information? Because there are certain categories that we're gonna use, like for housing or for recreation or whatever. Is that something you're gonna, excuse me, you're gonna be doing?
Yes, we are. We're continuing to do that and to. At this point, it's going to admittedly take a little while to completely go through and digest and analyze all of the information that's here, but we're working on particularly for the write-in responses, categorizing those and sorting them so that it's a little bit more easily understood. But yes, we will be carrying those, the different questions and responses over to various chapters, as well as including a high-level overview within the document itself.
So, will you, is the next step sort of like, are you going to use this information and your past experience to like, to formulate how we should do these vision workshops or whatever they're called? Like, will you come to us and tell us, okay, here's how I think you should handle it, here's the, the subject you should address in each one, or?
We can address it in multiple ways, not to dodge the question, but in some cases we would take this as well as the homework assignment and use that to really highlight, say, these are the 6 areas related to housing, kind of more of a visual preference display or something like that, or something that people can interact with, or when we look at this and see that there are 5 general areas that really stand out as priorities, we can do exercises that are almost a like a DIY budget type simulation where people are given 100 Poolsville bucks. It's basically Monopoly money that they vote with that money to see where their true priorities lie or how they would allocate funds to support those different topics. There's a variety of different exercises that we can utilize. And one of those is just based on this information, we can draft a vision statement. And of course, something like that is something we'd run by everyone here first, so that you don't get to the workshop and see it for the first time, but use that to gauge the community's reaction to it. Other ways to approach it are to have that workshop discussion, have the discussions or the exercises inform that statement's development. So it's one way or the other, or even a combination of the two. We haven't completely worked out details for that event, but needless to say, the information that is found in the survey will really help to inform that and future meetings, bless you, as well as future, as well as our future efforts.
I really like some of the things you're talking about, especially like the Monopoly money to see where true priorities lie and funding lies, because I feel like when I read this, there are a lot of different priorities that came out, and different questions had different priorities, even though they were kind of asking similar things. So I kind of left reading the overview a little unsure of where our town's priorities really truly lied. So we're laid, I don't know. So thanks, that sounds really great.
Great. And also just a quick update. I don't know how much you all love census data. I think coupled with your enjoyment of spreadsheets, I'm right there with you. But the the 2016-2020 American Community Survey data is actually being released tomorrow. Not it's the American Community Survey. So that I guess back before the 2010 Decennial Census, there was the short form and the long form survey. So the American Community Survey more or less takes the place of the long form questions. So those get more into economics and social questions, and it's a more detailed survey, but it's a survey. So it's a sample that is taken. The one that we're using, it's a sample that's the responses are aggregated over a 5-year period, and it's meant to be representative of the community. That has margins of error, and they have a lot of statistical information that goes into that. Whereas the decennial census, those are counts of primarily population and housing units. And of course, there are going to be those that don't respond or are under or overcounted for whatever reason. But those numbers are, if you have 100 people, you ask 100 people the same question, the response is the response of those 100 people, not we ask 25 people and their responses are supposed to reflect those of the 100.
So it's the survey one that comes out
Tomorrow. So that, yes, that one, even though it looks at data over a 5-year period, it gets released annually. So they just sort of lop off the early year and add on the newer year. Typically that gets released in December, but there was, of course, with the pandemic, their schedule got pushed a little bit. We're also seeing that with the full release of the 2020 Decennial Census information. So right now, the data that's been released is related to the redistricting information, and that has a more limited number of responses that come out. So that truly looks at the number of people, so the population, the number of housing units. It looks at group quarters, so those would be things like prisons or different institutions, things like that, and doesn't get into or that information that's already been released, while the population number and the housing unit will or should be the same as the data that gets released later. It's just not as in depth. Unfortunately, looking at the Census Bureau's release of the full 2020 census information, right now their calendar says basically probably in 2022 for what they call the data profiles. So I think that's probably most of the data that we would be using, or others may be more familiar with. Some of the much more detailed comparisons or cross tabulations that get released later on, they haven't even said 2022. So it's really a big question mark about when that will come out. But we'll, when we do include statistics like that, we're making sure to identify the source, making comparisons clearly so that you're not, comparing apples to oranges, things like that. So just something to be aware of. So tomorrow's a big day for us and a lot of our projects. We really get to take the historic data from the 2000 or 2010 census and start making those comparisons. What's changed? What are the trends that we're seeing? And then also being able to compare them to the county, the state, other similar communities, benchmark communities, and really, getting that picture from the data side of it. So while this is data, it's more qualitative data, where the numbers are what they are in most cases.
Awesome.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, thank you.
So we had all mentioned part of the outreach interviews with certain individuals, and I don't know if you had identified which individuals. I know we have 2 sections that are going to be added to the master or comprehensive plan, sustainable, and then maybe a fair access is going to have a part in there. They've shown interest in wanting to be interviewed. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Excuse me. We are going to be looking to those types of organizations, and then also following up on some of the early responses that or presentations that were given before we started working on the project, just if there are particular pieces of information to tease out a little bit. I know definitely our conversations are going to be crucial to that effort, getting more into the more technical pieces of it. It's one thing to say we want to make sure there's sustainable and quality water source, but what are the, what does that actually mean in terms of the engineering piece of it, or the capacity or allocations or things like that. So looking at that, we'll be having some discussions with the county, just as far as the that relationship and interactions there. Even just looking at the water resources component, that's something that is a requirement in the state code to have that type of intergovernmental coordination type effort. We haven't finalized that list yet, so if there are particular organizations, other commissions, specific people that you would like us to have on that list, we welcome that feedback, certainly. And then once we have that list compiled, we'll make sure to share that. And typically we have those as like a Teams call or something like that, and we'll develop a sort of a shorter briefing document that really distills or highlights the main points that were made, the main concerns or opportunities or programs or things like that.
And then lastly, do we have maybe a time frame for scheduling the visiting workshop and how that may work? And then you just let me know how I can assist in setting it up and all that things. But
sure,
the timetable would be nice.
Sure. We have not yet identified a particular date. That was one of the things that we wanted to discuss, just as far as time frame or I guess how the town was feeling as far as the pandemic or social distancing concerns. We have done these as completely virtual workshops. We've done them completely in person. We've done them as a hybrid. So it's really a matter of finding the right type of workshop style, what you're looking for. We start to develop that. We'd want to make sure that there's enough time to properly advertise the meetings and make sure that more than us show up at those, because your input and comments are wonderful, but not the intent of those meetings. So getting that word out there, and then another consideration is if there are existing town events or something like that, do we piggyback on one of those to draw people in while they're blanking on a. Yes, thank you.
I think our next one is Springfest, right? But probably not the one to not the one to piggyback on.
Get some interesting comments. I think it's really interesting. We actually just had a similar type of an exercise, and it was, as it always is, it's mostly adults. But one gentleman that came, his son came, who was maybe 8 years old. Even getting that perspective, that he wanted, he wants more places to get ice cream or to ride his skateboard. And, it's something that's cute and we can sort of laugh at it, but that means, a place that kids have activities, or I don't know who would turn down an ice cream store. So, it's just hearing information sort of out of the mouths of babes, but translating that into what it means for a comprehensive plan. So we've tied these to like a national night out event before, very family focused type event, where you get both responses from the parents and the kids that live in the community, because ideally those kids will grow up to be the adults and the parents in the community in 10, 20 years, so.
The only thing I think that when we set up these sessions, I wonder if we shouldn't, at the very least, do some kind of a hybrid model. I'm just worried that, if we say, okay, like we'll set something up in like May or something like that, and then like, looking at Europe and COVID is kind of coming back, and like, and then we have a bunch of people that like, some come, but like a lot of people are afraid to come, so they don't, so at the very least maybe do hybrid where we can, if nobody comes, or if we decide to just make it all virtual, we can, and we don't have to kick the can down the road or something, yeah.
I do think there's something, even I think we see it as we came back today, like it was nice to interact with you all. Even before the meeting, to say hi and to see how, learn different things about each other, because we didn't have very long as a full board to be together before we went virtual. So I do think that there's a positive to having an in-person component, but the weather's getting nicer. It's going to be lighter for longer. It would be really cool if we could do something that it's outside and have a hybrid option available as a rain alternative. I just think our community really comes out for things on the Commons. I mean, you can drive by here any Friday, and it is packed. And if we have some things that are kid-friendly, we could maybe talk to events committee and get some kid-friendly things on. Our community is pretty good about kids just kind of go, and parents, everybody just kind of watches everyone's kids. So
you could look at like a non-alcoholic happy hour or something,
We put the tents up.
some incentive to get people here.
When will they put the tents up for Springfest? Could we use those?
Possibly, we haven't worked out, with precedents, I worked out the exact dates, but figure that out.
I would say it'd have to be before Springfest, because after Springfest might not be your best day either. It'd have to
but
be
like
like
Thursday
right
or
before.
the Friday before. We're having either the county executives debate, candidate debate. It's going to be on Wayland Commons. That's staged. Same thing.
So for this kind of an exercise, do you envision people at a table, or can it just be people standing around? I mean, in my mind, it's like people sitting at a big brown table kind of thing, and
Yes and no. Even when we do have that, we like to have boards that have maps and things like that with question prompts, or here's a map of the town with various points of interest highlighted, but there's a question. These areas in town are great examples of transportation infrastructure. So we want you to really, tell us what, the areas that you find it extremely easy to get around, things like that. And then those are the, those get the green sticky dots. And then the red sticky dots are where are those transportation elements that, you're not as comfortable riding on that street, or whatever the case may be. You think there should be a side crosswalk in this location, or something like that. So there are those, that's just one example, but different activities. There's that budgeting piece of it, and trying to get at it from both the mapping, or that visual piece, visual preference surveys, where people can put, if they're given 5 dots, they can vote. They have 5 votes to tell us what their preferred aesthetic appearance is, from the sort of cottage house to the McMansion. And, if you really want a community full of McMansions, you put all 5 dots on that. But if you, want to mix, there's a variety of different exercises. But also having group discussions like this is also very helpful. So we try to incorporate multiple pieces of that. When we have these types of discussions, there's often that oh yeah, but did you think about this? And what about this thing that's related to that? So being able to piggyback off of others' ideas is really helpful. One thing that we noticed when we held the hybrid events or just the virtual events, people that don't tend to speak up in in-person events, you know who they are. They're more vocal in a chat box. So being able to record those, there isn't as much of a I have a different opinion than everyone else who lives on my street, but I don't want to say it because I won't be invited to the next barbecue type of a mentality. So it does give that, there's a small piece of anonymity, but not really, because we know who it is that's providing those comments. So even with that, providing multiple ways for people to interact is helpful. And even with any boards or things like that, being able to work with the town to put something like that up on the website so that they can, if somebody is out of town whenever the event is, they can come back and review the information and continue to provide input on those various topics. So it's really depending on if you want it to be completely in person, completely virtual, or combination of the two, inside, outside, combination of those. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. So really, it's a question of are we going to be looking at more of that hybrid opportunity, and then when would be an ideal time to schedule that, and then we'll prepare more of an outline or the draft materials that'll be used, and can get your feedback on those before the big day. Even something like that. Do we hold it at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, 6 to 7 p.m. in the afternoon, a Saturday morning? So even things like that. You obviously know your community much more than I do. So those nuances, when do you think you see more people participating? Just different things to consider.
Yeah, that's great. I love all the different exercises you have. It sounds like really creative ways to get people to think and share their opinions.
And just actually, if I just sort of piggybacking on something that you said earlier, you might end up finding that some of the questions sound a little familiar. So I'm sure you noticed that some of the questions in the survey closely resembled the questions that we asked as part of your homework assignment, or even questions within the survey were phrased slightly differently. So it gets to that, when we continue hearing responses that solidly point to a feeling of this, regardless of how the question is phrased, that really lets us know that this is a true priority. It's those that are sort of more in the gray areas that we need to work out a little bit more. So just sort of trying to reinforce different areas to make sure that those items that are prioritized or highlighted are really the ones that are important to the community for the next 10 to 20 years.
I feel like as you've talked about all these activities, like I'm envisioning this amazing thing on the Commons where we have like stations. As a teacher, clearly I'm like, oh yes, you have stations, and everybody's assigned to a group and the groups move. But it would just be so awesome if there was an opportunity to look at the vision statement and have somebody record people's just responses to it and thoughts about it. And then you have these opportunities to place physical dots on different maps and things. And you had another spot where it was led by somebody to record discussion amongst people. I just feel like there's just such an opportunity for all of that to happen in such a really cool way on a big scale, potentially.
Yeah, and if we were to be able to get drinks and donuts or something, like make it a social thing so people are interested in coming down. It didn't seem like work, it was kind of a fun hang out with your neighbors, talk a little bit about Poolsville.
Even if we could get some of the local businesses, if we did like a breakfast thing or coffees or something to, I don't know if they could, but potentially bring coffees over to sell or something like that to keep, to get people more interested. we're all buying it anyway, you know, might as well have it in one spot for the morning.
Even-
Saturday session when they have the little people selling stuff
Yeah.
in their little tent.
Yeah, we would just have to make sure it's maybe not a day that, it's like the motorcycles here, only because if we want it more focused on potentially Poolsville's, I mean, maybe we do want their input though too on what they think of our town, but I don't know. So
I think we know the organizer of that event, so we could probably make sure we're not in conflict.
Well, Sunday morning, by the way, we are prime time.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, we good?
So are you thinking something in conjunction with the Springfest event, or something that's more of a standalone?
Separate, but maybe coordinated. If we're gonna have tents out there for Springfest, and they're gonna have those up at a reasonable time, and we can make it work to use that, to have the outdoor opportunity and some protection from rain or sun, I think that works. If it doesn't seem that the timing is gonna work out, then we can certainly come up with other options. But when is Springfest, by the way? Do we have dates for it?
On top of my head, I do not know, but I think.
Like May 17th? May something. How's
Okay,
that?
good.
That's where my head was. but-
Right.
I was
And
gonna
that-
say it's
that
always
should be-
right around the, what is the horse thing?
Mother's Day?
No, always around the Potomac Hunt, race. And so I know that that's right around that weekend, around the 16th, 17th, 14th, something in that range.
We also have nice pavilions. If
It's
you're
like
thinking
May
just
21st.
May 21st.
under 40 people, our town
Right.
pavilions will work.
Yeah, like at the Stevens Park or.
Elgin, Stephen, they have picnic tables already there.
So May 21st is a Saturday, so maybe something like a Friday night, like, if the tents are up, like a Friday night, like non-alcohol happy hour kind of thing.
I'm wondering if we'll get as many people. I know, like,
Friday night's
having,
tough.
like, I was gonna say,
What?
commuting.
Friday night's tough.
Like, cause I go into work every day, so commuting, having a little one, like, that's hard. Friday night's hard.
Well, maybe we do it right before Springfest or something, like,
Morning,
The
in
morning.
the morning, Saturday morning or something.
Saturday morning, right?
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like an hour before Springfest starts, so you can just come and.
You could serve coffee and
2 to 10, you said?
Yeah,
you could.
Springfest is
I like
on
that
the
idea.
21st from 2 to 7.
2 to 7.
Right, so you could do something
Yeah, we could do
like
it 1
10
o'clock.
to noon. So
Yeah,
serve
noon or
coffee
1.
and
Yep.
bam, done, we've done it, we've planned it.
Work is,
It's a good idea. I'd like to see what she comes up with, and But yeah, I think it's a reasonable idea, and the time frame is reasonable for you.
I think, we can confirm the specific details and logistics piece of it. And then, put together, flyers, social media, press release, that type of thing, and start getting that word out. I think, a month, definitely a month's worth of time as far as advertising, or at this point, closer to
It's 2 months
2
now.
months.
Yeah.
That's plenty of time. We don't necessarily want to advertise too early, but, finding that sweet spot of time so that there's the opportunity for multiple
How long would you
highlights.
think that would take? What's the difference, I mean, if you have it?
As far as,
2 hours?
I think, depending on the ultimate format, probably an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Just like box out too, with the event coordinator, just.
Sure.
Coordinator.
I was gonna say, we could put that on like any message on like Facebook or the town site or anything about Springfest, and just like tie it right in, because people are gonna be so excited to go back to Springfest this year, I think.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if we can put it almost first.
So let's get the
It might
let's give
really.
ourselves our next meeting will be our benchmark to have the event actually fully planned out and approved and ready to go, and then we'll start advertising right after that.
You may want to keep it, I don't know, like at an hour. I think people might lose, unless you're talking about like you can drop in and, do it at your, but I don't think people are going to stick around for 2 hours.
Hours quick, we just spent an hour.
Yeah,
talking about these, sir.
And
It does go by much
done these before.
faster than,
Good point.
than it seems like it would. But certainly for any of the stations, those would be more, you can progress through them at your leisure, looking at
Gotcha.
boards or things like that. If we're wanting to have a more focused discussion, then perhaps if we look at a 2-hour event, maybe having one during the first hour, one during the second hour, and just making sure that those times are highlighted, so that anyone that's present can, know that this is when we're holding those. But, there's a variety of different ways that we can approach it. So we'll go back to the office and do a little brainstorming and, put together sort of what we're thinking and some options that, you can let us know which activities you think would be most well-received here, and, can piggyback on the Springfest theme and things like that. So, I think this is a great opportunity.
Really quickly, Wade, do you think it's going to be too much for the Spring Fest committee to get like their vendors out and like set up?
Yeah, he's gonna have to look into that.
Yeah.
He mentioned earlier, yeah.
Yeah. Because, 2 hours is not a bad amount of time still, but I just don't know how
Yeah.
long the typical setup is.
And if we, right, right,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
And if that's not an option, then we find something else, figure something else out. All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Back to new business.
Hey, Wade, are you gonna send the survey results to the rest of the commissioners, or do you want me to? I can-
Let me clean up the back pages first.
Okay, cool.
I don't think honestly, I didn't get to the back pages either, so.
Yeah.
Technically, it's available now.
I read everything and I didn't get that.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe just make that link not a live link anymore until you clean it and then put it back on. Yeah, okay, cool.
So, what do you got for us, Wade?
Okay, so the new business, yes. This has been hanging around for quite a long time, and it just has never been here. Jay, are you in the house?
I am in the house.
Show your face.
How's that?
How you doing?
I'm even awake. There we go.
Okay, so Jay and I both, there was a shed variance that came through a while back, and they were just getting over the certain size of what was allowed, whatever that zone was. I think it was a 30-acre zone. And it,
Was this the one on Hempstone?
was it Hempstone, Jay? Okay.
Yes.
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 And the zoning board denied it or
And
something?
they denied it. And so, in principle, we've, over the past.
But they
7
didn't
years-
really deny it. They just didn't act on it.
Well, okay.
Just
So it's the same thing, but different.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's always been a practice that with town staff, and it started a long time ago with the planning commission, that you could incorporate, because you're allowed, well, just take the 30-acre zone, you're allowed 250 square foot sheds, but you can't have one 160-foot shed. And so it was always just by practice. We said, okay, fine, but you only get one shed though, but you can make it larger, but not to exceed the 300 square feet. So that was a practice that always happened. And I was gone on this one here, and John actually, he didn't know about it, and he took over doing the permits. Bobby stopped looking at him, so no one knew, and there was a void there. And that's kind of why that happened to that one person. But in theory, if you guys agree with what I'm proposing here to fix it like it used to be, this would be the way to go about it, just to put a note in the back, and Jay and I have looked at this. It doesn't change the lot coverage or the square footage that the shed would actually take up, so it's no harm, no foul type of thing, and actually, one larger shed rather than two sheds, in my opinion, would be more aesthetically pleasing to neighbors, but.
Did he, ultimately, was he able to get this shed?
They got a garage.
Well, that's what I meant. Yeah, did he get it?
Okay.
Yeah, they got a garage.
Like what he asked for?
Well, so the issue sometimes with that is when you go to the county, you have a zoning approval.
Oh,
for a
it's just
garage,
called a
Then you have to put a
garage.
Yes, that's why he says.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's good. I'm glad he,
yeah, but so I'm
Got
surprised the county didn't catch it, because have people come back and say, well, they approved me for a garage. Well, you have the zoning permit for a garage, you go to the county, you get to put a concrete floor in it. So
And they may
it's,
have had to put a concrete floor.
and maybe he might have, which is very expensive, but.
So basically, you can have one or two buildings, just can't exceed 300?
Right, for the shed aspect of it, correctly. And we've done the same thing with the garages too. You could incorporate one of the accessory shed buildings with the garage to oversize it slightly, but then you're limited to, I mean, so it's just still about lot coverage, square footage, lot coverage. And that does not change the intent of what the whole, how it was written to begin with.
Makes
I have a
sense.
question about that particular case. I feel like I remember that there was something about the height of the proposed shed or something that we were that we had been talking about. And I felt like that was the big sticking point for us all.
Well, the
Am I
height's really a
misremembering that?
thing. Yeah, I'm not for sure, but
Yeah, the height was resolved, and what it was is they wanted it closer to the 600 square foot. So that they went in for a garage, and it has to have conforming door and all the other stuff that a garage would have. And then they had to have a pathway back to it, and that was resolved.
that was because of the county.
That's right.
So the height thing too, which I included here, is a very strange thing. We have a definition for height for structures, and it says to the ceiling of the highest living space. Well, that isn't applicable to sheds or accessory buildings at all. So if we just spell it out, so it's to the peak of the roof, which is the intent, is what it should be anyways for an accessory building.
Right.
So it's just things we run into on the permitting side that, we've always taken care of, but it's never been codified, and so this is what I propose.
And if I can add, the problem with the Board of Zoning Appeals is they require a hardship to grant any extension. So these people in this case wanted a little bit bigger building to fit their kayaks, made sense, but there was no hardship. So the board was like, we're going to turn this down if it actually comes to a decision. This rule will take away the hardship because it's going to be done administratively.
I don't have any questions or comments other than I support it. I think it makes perfect sense.
So to me, it makes sense, but as I read the proposed notation, for sheds, the maximum floor area can combine the allowable square footage for two buildings into one. Does that mean two sheds, which I think is the,
Yes, because
Or-
garage is specifically garage in the
Okay.
text there.
So
And, yeah,
two-
if we would wordsmith the text, please help me, because when I was doing it, I changed it 4 times myself. So.
well, just as like a person who doesn't read code all the time, I'm reading that and I'm like, does that mean I can have the 600 plus the 150, that I can have 750 feet?
So I think you can clear it up by saying the allowable square footage for two sheds into one instead of buildings.
No, but can I build a garage and two sheds?
No.
It specifically says you.
No, that's already limited.
Yeah.
Right.
Where do you see that?
Right.
This will count for two accessory
Detached
buildings.
garage, maximum floor area can include one accessory building square footage. So I can only have two structures.
You can only have one if it's a detached garage.
That's not true.
No, you can have 2. You can have a
You can have a
shed and a garage,
You,
or 2 sheds.
Can I have 3 small sheds?
Only if you're 3/4 acre.
Yes, 3/4 acre you can.
So I can't have 3 small sheds under 300 square. I can't have 100 square feet per
No.
shed.
But can include.
but it
one
says you
accessory
can on
building.
3/4 of an acre. It
Yes.
says you can have
And
three.
3/4 acres, yes.
But each acreage is different.
Right.
Which really messed up my wording.
So-
when I-
So according to this, you could have a detached garage for 1/3 and 1/2 an acre, but then you wouldn't be able to have a shed because that accounts for your allotted 2. But on 3/4 of an acre, you could have both a detached and a shed, or up to 3 sheds, no garage. Am I reading that correct?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand how this all breaks down.
When I look above and I read similarly, a detached garage could be increased to include the allowable shed square footage. A 750 square foot garage could be permissible in the 1/3 acre zone.
Actually, 1,000.
Well, I felt that was too large and took away from the
Oh.
intent.
So oh, right.
So that's me just being practical
Yep.
with it.
Yep. So the math doesn't add up, but it's right.
For reference, a 750 square foot garage is like a 4-car garage. Like,
Yes.
yes. Like the average garage is around 350, 400 square feet.
That's like my whole backyard.
Right.
That's why you can't have it.
Yeah.
That's why it's not.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're in PR2, then it doesn't have this.
And then this is like, if it changes, it's a whole, it covers itself.
There's also a lot coverage issue that you get into.
I was gonna ask about
Also,
that.
our lot coverage is based upon the roof line, not the total asphalt area.
Yeah, so that's gonna trump anything that they would have on here, if they have anything else. You have to have all categories, including this one covered. Yeah.
So lot coverage is based on footprint and not on
Not
gross building.
impervious surface,
Okay.
that's correct.
How come we concerned about the number of buildings and not just the square footage? Like, why does it matter if I have 3 sheds at 300 square
I
feet
think
versus
it's-
2?
It's just to have,
Doesn't look as.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
aesthetics.
Pleasing.
How do you know?
Because
I may
then you
have 3
run
really cute
into
little
extra.
buildings.
So then you run into like a functional
Subjective.
obsolescence issue.
I mean, I think,
and
yeah.
and it becomes actually a type of depreciation on both your house and then on your neighbor's house. You can't have that many buildings.
it does look bad, but I've seen it, I mean, everybody's seen it.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Every,
Yeah.
So,
there's probably 500 homes in Poolsville that have 3.
I'm gonna get my drone out.
Kevin,
Yeah.
we're coming to visit.
And there, yeah. I
Now,
mean,
not me, but I've heard of people who have these structures in their yard.
Well, not permissibly.
Where's that zoning compliance officer?
So John, you see anything wrong with this?
No, actually, we tossed it around a bit. I actually pulled from a couple different places and looked at what they did. And
How about you, Jay?
No, this is going to resolve it and make it fair, because most people aren't following the rules anyway.
So, can I make a motion to accept?
So it'd be a motion to make a recommendation to the commissioners to make the amendment.
Okay.
And before we get that out, does that wording make sense to you, Amanda? You said it didn't. For sheds, the maximum floor area can combine the allowable square footage for 2 buildings into one, which could be interpreted as a garage and a shed.
Yeah.
And that's true.
So you'd rather change the word building to shed,
I don't think,
I don't know.
for clarity. And is that,
Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one.
I would. The only thing that confused me was this will account for 2 accessory buildings. Maybe this would be equivalent to,
well,
like, because there's an equivalency there.
there is, but you're allowed 2, so just as long as, it's more than equivalent to, you're allowed 2, so.
Right, but the garage would be equivalent
right,
to a building.
to 2 accessories.
right.
Right.
If you use the,
I find the word, I understand what you're trying to say, I just find the wording.
I had a difficult time.
You're right, the wording is tricky. I'm with you, that it doesn't line up.
I feel like even saying, like, instead of this will account for 2 accessory buildings, if the maximum floor area for 1 accessory building is exceeded, you can only have 1 accessory building for the shed, right? Because you can increase the shed building, but then you don't have another accessory building, right?
I think I had that as one of my drafts. That right there.
And the detached garage, so I could have a detached garage and a shed, right? If I was under 150 and 600 square feet, if I lived in PR 1/3, right? Okay. But if I have a detached garage that is 700 square feet, that is my only building now.
That's right.
Okay. So I feel like I need that said in that second sentence.
Right, so you won't,
So this will be your only accessory building allowed.
because now your square footage is
if
you exceed the square footage over the 600 plus the shed.
If you combine If you combine them.
Yeah, if you get, right.
I feel like it's,
Yeah, I don't wanna be ambiguous with it at all.
I feel like it's if you exceed the allowable the allowable floor area for one accessory building or one garage.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate
You
here because
only have
I'm still a
one.
proponent of 3 buildings. I would just keep it to square footage. You're allowed this many square footage per
You wanna
of
vote-
accessory
you wanna-
dwellings.
You guys want to vote
But
on
you
that?
want 3 buildings.
Yeah, I want 4, 5. I don't care. You just can't exceed
What if I want to
600.
put kennels in my backyard and I want to have
No.
4 or 5
Just don't
kennels?
exceed 600
Right, but
square
their footprint is only like 50, 60 square feet.
I would
So
not be in favor of that. I'm not in favor of your
I do not know.
No.
I'm sorry.
Hard pass.
I'll tell you. You guys are on the wrong side of the coin on this. Maybe.
I feel
I'll
like
take
in the
that risk.
right situation,
I'm gonna drop
I
all
feel like
50
in the
square feet.
right house, it could be awesome. People could have these really cute, like cottage-like sheds that are all very
planting
similar
shed.
and beautifully done. I just don't feel like that's realistic for most people. Like I'm envisioning people going and buying like a cheaper small shed and putting multiple cheap small sheds
It'll have
that are
5
rickety.
Rubbermaid sheds.
Like not like these beautiful cottage-like sheds that are planting sheds and like your greenhouse shed. That's not what I'm envisioning. I wish it
I'm
was.
trying to junk up Poolsville. Let's just call it what it is.
Well, I'm just look around your neighborhood.
Say what it is.
You're going to see someone with a planting shed, someone with a greenhouse,
It's not
someone
gonna-
with a
It's not going to
shed
be in code, though.
for their mowers and
It's
stuff
not
like
going to be
that.
permissible by code.
How about just no additional accessory buildings will be allowed? No, not,
Well, except with, with the except, but there's the exception on a 3/4 acre lot.
I know, that was my problem
Yeah.
all the time, yes.
Why don't you say?
And you could
for
say
sh-
that, except for 3/4 acre lots.
Or you could say for sheds, the maximum floor area can combine the allowable square footage for the number of accessory buildings into one. That way, if you have the number of accessory buildings, you look at your lot size, I can have 3 accessory buildings, I can combine my square footage for all 3,
See, and one of the things.
right?
One of the jurisdictions we looked at, all they did is they didn't call it a shed or what the building was. They just said what the maximum square footage was of an accessory building. Of an accessory building, and then they said,
I personally
Number
like
2.
not making a distinction between a
Shed
shed
and a
and a
garage.
garage or a detached garage or whatever you want to call it. I don't know that the distinction is
Why
necessary.
do we distinguish?
Is it because we need a concrete pad for a detached garage?
There's 2 different building heights also with the garage.
right, the permitting process in
Yeah.
Montgomery County. Because Montgomery County says, well, what is it zoned for? And that's why when the county's going to it, and a number of the Chevy Chase villages and stuff have gone to just the square footage, and you can have up to 2 buildings meeting that maximum square footage.
Why couldn't you tie the height with the foundation? So didn't you say that you were allowed more height if it was a garage, but that requires a concrete foundation? And so you could make that part of, if your accessory building is permanently affixed on a concrete foundation, it's not on a conventional foundation, then because it is a more solid structure,
that's
you are
what-
allowed more height.
That's what they consider garage.
Right, but this way you don't have to make the distinction between garage and accessory
I mean,
building.
you're doing it, just not using the word garage.
Right, but you're tying the height, to the foundation and not the height to the classification.
Yeah, and it would be, just as a distinction, it would be to the slab.
Oh.
Slab height, yeah.
Can I make a motion we table this to the next meeting?
Oh, absolutely, this is not,
I didn't even think about it.
this is not like,
Huh?
I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said
So you can go out
that.
there and lobby for like 20 minutes.
Just saying.
Position. No.
Kevin's chicken houses.
Kevin's gonna come in with all these pictures of multiple.
We're gonna see like
multiple
on the Facebook page, like Airbnb.
Well, I'm going over everyone's. I'm looking at the aerial photos now,
Doesn't matter what exists right now, Kevin. That's
I
what we
know.
want to legislate for the future.
and that's why I want to make it easy and simple.
all right, well, you guys have your homework.
So, was that a real motion?
That was.
All right. Do I need a second, or are we just going to say we're tabling it? We don't need to motion that. That's not an executive decision. Yeah. We'll pick it up next time.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Seconded.
No one approved my motion to table.
Don't need it, we just said.
Oh, okay.
I already seconded the motion to adjourn, so we're going on.
All in
In
favor?
favor? Aye.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you, Jay.